I was at drama school, I was at RADA, and I'd signed with an agent sort of just as I was sort of a couple of months before I left. Everyone else had lots of agents sort of squabbling over them, and one agent approached me and I went, well, that'll do. And then I got a call saying, you've got an audition for a thing called Dinner Ladies written by Victoria Wood. And I just remember it didn't really sink in, and I didn't think about getting it. I just went, oh, I'm going to sit in a room with Victoria Wood, how exciting. Getting the job didn't seem sort of possible, but I never thought like that at the beginning. I was just like, oh, I've got an audition, that's good. You know, the possibility of getting a job didn't seem feasible. But anyway, so, yeah, I went in, and I think what had happened was, I think my agent had suggested me, and I'd heard that Vic wasn't too sure because I'd not done anything, I was still at drama school, and then I'd done a South Bank show, which is a bit like a Victoria Wood spoof, if you watch it. I do look like one of her characters. I was rather large at the time and very northern and going, oh, it's great being here. It was about me being at RADA, so they sent her this South Bank show, and I think she went, yeah, she's ridiculous, she'll do. So then I got the meeting, and then I got to sit in a room with all these amazing people, and that was a little bit much. And actually, the one note she said to me is, you're northern, don't be more northern. And I said, what do you mean? She says, well, northern actors come in and then they northern up even more because they think that's funny. So I did the first audition, and then I got a call and got a recall. And I remember going to the recall and Shobna Galati was there, and again, I couldn't believe it. And then we got chatting, and then the next thing, I got the job. And I can't really remember much after that, just sort of starting. And yeah, so that was... It was a dream come true. I'm not just saying it. It was.
Julie Walters, I was looking at an interview, and Victoria.
Yes.
She told Michael Parkinson.
Spot of gin. Yes.
She told Michael Parkinson. One of the most generous things that you could say about anyone. She said you gave her voice.
Who said that?
Victoria.
I didn't know, I actually never knew that.
She said at the Bush Theatre in 1978, yes, you were peeing in glasses because the lavvy was round the front.
Yes.
This is true.
It's true. The dressing room was a fire escape at the back. That was the dressing room. There were about 6 of us in there. So once the show was up, you couldn't go. We tried to do it once, and we went in the interval to the toilet where all the audience were. And we heard somebody saying something, they weren't coming back for the second half, so we never went there. So it was, and we had to pee, because we couldn't go to the toilet, we had to pee in these beer glasses. We all had a few beers in those days, you don't do it now. But, so it was always, don't drink that, you know, and people
Piers, you wrote her a love letter.
Yeah, of sorts. There was a professional kind of basis for the love letter. I was working as a script editor at Granada, and I'd sort of grown up as a massive Victoria Wood fan. Like, I had all her sketches, all the as seen on TVs on VHS as it was then, and I used to watch them again and again. I had the books of the scripts for those shows, and I just knew her work really, really well. And I felt that there was, you know, she was clearly someone who loved telling stories, even in sketch form. And I was hoping that I could get a show away with ITV, and I wrote to Victoria and asked her if she would consider writing a long-form drama, and to my great amazement, she wrote back and said that she had got some drama ideas, that she wasn't at a point where she was necessarily ready to share them, but that we should meet up, and we did, and that's how we got to work together. I think Victoria wrote all her characters. I think she wrote men brilliantly as well as women.
She said she never understood men. She preferred to write women. That's what she said.
I think she was being modest. I think the thing that really stands out for me about that clip is just her incredible craft. Like, you know, Victoria would have sat and worked and worked and worked and worked and worked at those lines so that they landed brilliantly. And you can see that, can't you? You can see that in her delivery. She just lands a line. And it's funny, and the choice of words is so exact.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like when we did. When we were working on any of her scripts, it was absolutely, with other people's scripts, I was always rewriting them and changing things. Terrible liberties. But not with Vic's. I mean, they were just so perfect anyway. And she wanted you to play every comma, didn't she? And every, terrifying going on for Dinner Ladies. But anyway, on a live show. But yeah, they're like songs almost.
Yeah. It is like music, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you hit, it's like you get the word wrong. It's like a bum note. It sings out. So yeah.
Why was there so much sex in her act, do you think? I mean, as an example, she must be the only person in the history of British comedy who could rhyme halter necks with oral sex.
Because I was a little bit obsessed with it, like we all were then. And I think, well, have suffered the menopause. And so, just have a drink.
Piers, do you think there was a lot of sex in it? Because...
What's sex? Can anyone tell me?
I think for me, as growing up with the 70s and 80s, as you did, men, when they spoke about their sex, it was always the woman who had a headache. And in Let's Do It, it was the man who couldn't perform and didn't perform. That's very subversive. She'd have been whipped in Saudi Arabia for those sort of...
Well, I think kind of two things. I think she was pioneering in her stand-up. That there hadn't been a long tradition of female stand-ups when Victoria was selling out the Albert Hall and doing these huge tours. And men have often made smutty jokes in stand-up, and I think Victoria was just sort of saying, well, actually women are part of that conversation too, and we can be funny about it as well. So I think that was kind of.
And it hadn't been done.
And she wasn't
new ground.
Yeah, and it was real and honest, wasn't it? Yes. I think that's what people respond to in Let's Do It. It's just putting sex, on a level of which it's experienced by most people, which isn't this sort of, well, it isn't always terribly charged and erotic, but often it is just, just a normal part of life. And I think
putting it on the hostess trolley, I seem to remember, but good old Piers, you can see why he fell in love with Victoria. Maxine, do you also think that there was, if you wanted to know where her world was, as who was born in Guildford, it was very much not Guildford. The world of Victoria Wood to me was very female, very funny, and very northern.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have thought that they were just, they happened to be, most of the characters happened to come from the north, but it felt sort of universal, that people just recognised those. That was what a genius was, that, they were just people that everybody could recognise, despite the accent, despite the sort of place where they, If
you think about Eric and Ernie, which she didn't write it, but she starred as Eric's mum, Sadie. Yeah. There's a very poignant moment where Eric sacks her as the manager. And I wonder, do you agree with me that there was a melancholy under a lot of her comedy, that some of these women were strong and funny, but also they were a bit sad, or had sad lives which they had to overcome?
I think she just wrote about life as she saw it, really. And for most people, life is kind of sad and funny, and often sad moments have also utterly hilarious moments within them, and I think she just kind of saw the truth in ordinary situations and mined them for comedy and emotion.
And what do you all think was the link between her comedy and her drama? Was she a comedian who always wanted to do straight writing, Maxine? What do you think?
I don't know. I just was saying to Peg before, I did, even during Linda's, I wondered whether I felt she'd had a desire. I don't know, a long desire, but I remember thinking during Dinner Ladies to do some serious acting. And when I heard about House 14, I remember thinking, brilliant, she's doing it. I just felt that, and I think sometimes when you get labelled as one, people, you get labelled, don't you? You get slightly pigeonholed. I mean, pigeonhole's a genius, but so I think that felt to me that the natural progression and something that maybe she felt she wanted a bit to get out of the system and show she could do. And I think the thing with comedians, and especially Vic, why she was so funny is because she was so truthful. So she can be that truthful in a comedy and so full of empathy, then if she takes that into straight acting, and it went to show, she won the BAFTA that did. I remember we'd been up for See No Evil. I can't believe I did it. And See No Evil had won. It was a thing I played Myra Inlet. That wasn't a comedy. And I was with all the other, Joe Froggatt and Sean Harrison were all coming, and we were coming back after. You have to go and have your pictures taken after you've won, going, oh, really pleased. And Vic had just won, and I remember she walked past and I just went like this, brilliant, and grabbed her cheeks. But I remember being so pleased with her, and I walked off and went, what have I just done? just grabbed Victoria's cheeks and went like that, like some auntie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was so pleased when she won. I just felt, I was so proud of her, but I thought, brilliant. I think that's what, to have that BAFTA for straight acting would have meant so much to her, I think.
Yeah.
Julie, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think she was fascinated by acting, and she was also someone who always wanted to create. She was hugely creative, and she unlike a lot of people, she, as seen on TV, was massively successful. 2 series wanted to do something else. She didn't just do it because it was, everybody wanted to see it, and so she was massively creative, and acting was another thing. Another way of expressing what was in here, straight acting.
And she went on to, direct as well.
Yes, exactly.
That day we sang. I mean, if you just listing her achievements in the last 10 years, Acorn Antiques the musical, that day we sang Housewife 49, executive producing Eric and Ernie. She was a true original and a kind of a true genius.
Yeah.
How did she work? Did she have lots of bits of things on the floor? Did she have lines in diaries? Did she write things down she heard people say and thought, that's funny? Quiches, consommé, all these things.
I think she was just like a sponge for all of that
yes, she
sort
was.
of stuff.
And she did have a little book.
Yes.
She did write. If she heard things, she'd write. I can remember her writing things down.
And Piers, you said that you went to her home and she would script with index cards for characters.
Yeah, she'd usually sort of write a first draft, and she wouldn't tend to show that to anyone, and then she'd have another go at it, and it was often at that point that she might ask me to read it. But she was quite rare in that she really liked input, and she really liked notes, and not many writers, or not all writers necessarily do, or certainly not mine. But she said, I know that if I rewrite a script 10 times, it will just be 10 times better. And that, that was her. She was so dedicated. When she was doing Dinner Lady, she used to stay up all night when you were doing the read-through week, didn't she?
Yes.
Rewriting, and obsessively sort of, perfecting gags, and she did the same with Housewife 49 and Loving Miss Hatto, and that day we sang, she'd write these characters and these scenes, and it made my job very easy because they were real. Those people had such life to them. All you needed to do, and when the index cards came out, was just when you were putting them into the right order. Often it would just be about sort of moving a scene around in a script, and then it all fell into place. And she was totally up for that. And as someone who'd literally grown up memorizing her work, it was I really did all the way through, the whole time that I knew her. I never ever forgot, what a huge dream come true it was that I got to work with someone who I'd idolised as a young man.
Yeah.
You've talked about her incredible work ethic. Did you ever get the sense that as she was doing it, she was enjoying what she was doing? And also, if she was here now, looking back on the career that we're looking back on, do you think she'd look back satisfied and she'd be happy with it?
I think she loved making stuff.
Excited by it.
Yeah, and she loved the process, and she loved sort of on a film unit, sort of working out who was good at their job and who wasn't good at their job, and overside anyone who wasn't. I think she found writing tough because writing is hard. One writer recently described it to me like pissing glass, and I think that's what it. I think it really, if you're good,
yes,
you really have to work at it and sort of dig very deeply. And I think she'd be. We were saying before we came on, she'd be thrilled. She'd be absolutely thrilled to have her work being discussed today, and in the series of programmes that are going to come out starting next week on the BBC tribute programmes. And but I think the really frustrating thing for me is that there was so much more she wanted to do, and she did talk about that. She talked about it all the way through, right up until the end, the work, the stories that she still had to tell.
Julie, what do you feel about it?
Constantly evolving, yeah.
Was she satisfied? I mean,
I don't think she'd ever be satisfied. No, I don't think any creative person is really ever looking back and going, I'm satisfied with that now.
I just think
have a nice cup of tea. No, I don't think she is.
But selling out the Albert Hall, I was looking at the shows, and she's so happy in the encore. She comes on and she said, I think, that she wanted to perform from a very young age. did she absolutely adore applause? Did she adore the fact that the Albert Hall, she's all alone, she's sold the whole thing out? Did that matter to her, do you think?
Yeah, I think so, don't you? I think she absolutely adored it. Yeah, and it was amazing, because I used to say to her, are you nervous? And she'd say, no. I've never known anybody like that. She's completely unique in that way. That's what she used to say. I mean, did she say that to you?
Yeah.
She was excited. But she wasn't.
Feel it. You could see it in her, couldn't you? When you know, had the
but she
pain
wasn't.
stuck in her work.
She didn't have destructive nerves like 99.9% of performers do. Well, we first met at the Bush, as I say, first of all, and we'd been there a couple of weeks rehearsing this In at the Death thing, and then we were in the cafe one day, and over my liver boil and chips, which is what it said on the menu, she said, we've met before. And I thought, she's gone mad. I said, yeah, well, yesterday. So she said, no, a long time ago, 1971, I think it was. And I said, where? And she said, at Manchester Poly. I came and auditioned, and you were a first year. And I thought, yeah, because I was a first year student, showing off in my leotard and tights, showing all the auditionees in, and, you know, cracking jokes and being awful, I imagine. Anyway, I was trying to think. And then this image came to me of this little girl, shy girl, throwing up in a bucket. And that was Vic, being sick and being really... And she didn't get in. Well, they've never been forgiven for that. I told every news outlet going later that she'd been auditioned and not got in, and then eventually I got a letter from the director of the now Metropolitan University of Manchester, whatever it's called, saying, please, we're sorry she didn't get in. For God's sake, will you stop? So I just thought I'd mention it again today.
She would be so delighted to have heard everyone's words here tonight. She would have just loved it.
Well, I endorse that too. I think it's very hard. Just that it's incalculable that she's not, you know, the loss is...
Maxine?
But it's amazing that it will live on, and it'll give, you know, much joy to generations to come. People still carry on discovering her as, I think the best comic we've had.
There's been real laughter listening